Worrying revelations of illegal schools operating in Gauteng. Authorities today shut down one of them in Ivory Park in Midrand. Education MEC Panyaza Lesufi says his department is compiling a report to determine the future of these illegal schools. Let's find out what's going to happen. The MEC joins us now live via Skype. MEC, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. First of all, let's try to unpack exactly what qualifies as an illegal school and how they operate.
Thank you so much, Shahan, for the opportunity. To declare a school an illegal school, it means that it's not properly registered. And if it's not properly registered, it means it's not met four critical conditions. The first one, obviously, is to submit the profile of their curriculum, that is to know what kind of education they want to offer, whether it's in line with what you are offering as public education. Secondly is the qualifications of their educators. Thirdly, the environment in which they operate. Fourthly, which is very important, is the profile of the learners, so that we have an understanding of the profile of the learners. But if you look at the infrastructure of the school, you can see that you can't allow education to take place there, because within education, you need to allow physical training. You also need to allow children to play. But if you operate in an environment that is not regulated, where you're occupying buildings that you don't have an occupation certificate, we have no choice but to shut down the schools. And that's the reason why we visited the three schools we visited today. And I'm disappointed, I must be honest. I don't think our officials are also immune from taking some form of responsibility, because some of the schools have been operating for more than 5 years, and we can't allow that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worrying thing, right? So what happened to those pupils? What happens to those pupils who studied at these schools for 5 years? I mean, do they progress to the next standard if they shut down? What happens?
They can't, and that's another major problem, Shahan, because these learners, the schools end at grade 10. Simply means after grade 10, they're just dumped, because the owners of the schools, they know from grade 11 and grade 12, you need to meet certain requirements, and they know they will never meet those requirements. So they're easily dicing with the future of our children. They're taking the parents for a ride. They're collecting money knowingly that they're not providing quality education. So we have no choice now to take a profile or to conduct a profile of all these learners and therefore place them within the public education system. But there are three critical things that on the word go you can see that these learners will not meet the requirements. One, majority of those learners are not documented. Secondly, majority of the parents that brought these children in our country are also not documented. And lastly, which is very important, the teachers that are teaching these learners are not documented. I mean, when I arrived at one school, all the teachers ran away, literally indicating that they know that they're in our country illegally or they're teaching illegally. And that's a serious offense. But the police managed to arrest almost 16 people today during the raids. And we are quite convinced that we have to arrest the kingpins, because when we just arrest those that are dealing with the running of the school, we are missing out on the people that are operating and taking money from parents and doing things that are completely unacceptable.
Yeah. I mean, given that it is an educational injustice that all of these kids spent 5 years at least studying, and now we don't even know what grade they actually qualify for, you yourself mentioned that some of your officials need to be held accountable for allowing this to happen. So is this an oversight failure then?
It is, definitely. And it's not this school only. I mean, we are inundated with schools that just are mushrooming all over, in sporting fields, in taverns, especially in our CBDs. So we've now strengthened our oversight team. We've appointed a full-time director now with people that will assist to track these schools, because they're dicing with the future of our children, and that worries us, because majority of these children will not even get an admission at a higher education institution. Majority of these learners will not even get a proper report card at the end of the academic year. So we need to nip it in the bud as early as possible, and that's the reason why we're visiting some of them. We're going to continue to visit some of them even this week to ensure that we close them down. The good thing is that we're working together with the police now. We're not going there as a department, because when we go in there as a department alone, we didn't have the power to arrest, we didn't have the power to interrogate and ask people questions. But when we are with the police, and that is why they've arrested so many people today.
Yeah.
And we'll use that method to ensure that we arrest other people as well.
So, Panyaza, I want to now focus on accountability, right? And especially when it comes to your department. Who now needs to be held accountable for allowing this to happen at so many schools in the province?
The team that is managing the registration of schools. I've said it in uncertain terms to them this morning, that they're not immune from taking some form of responsibility, because you can't just have somebody come into a country and just open a school and nothing happens. And they do that for 5 years. So there is a team that I've appointed that is reviewing the entire value chain, where the registration documents are deposited, because some of the schools said we have forwarded our documents. And I said to them, to forward the document does not mean you must operate. We also have to check the capacity, but most importantly, we have to check who's responsible for allowing these schools to operate. And these schools are operating without somebody notifying the department or noticing that they are operating. So I'll definitely take action there, Shahan.
Yeah. So what happens now? You say you're compiling a report, which means you'll look even further into these bogus schools. How many do you think is actually operating in the province?
I suspect they run into hundreds of schools. That's my view. If one person can own 3 schools in one area, you can imagine if you have to go to Diepsloot, Orange Farm, you have to go to Soweto, you have to go to CBDs of Roodepoort, Johannesburg and Pretoria. We'll have this kind of schools. But at least now, we've got the necessary protocols. We're working with local government, we're working with the police, and we're working with those that are responsible for registration of companies, because majority of these schools are run by private companies. So we are tracking all of them at the same time, whether they are tax compliant, and secondly, whether they're paying all the relevant levies like the UIF and other related taxes. So it's a joint team, and we're moving with speed to ensure all of them are eliminated, because we can't allow this. It's just a waste of our children's future and waste of the resources of our country.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. That is Gauteng Education MEC Panyaza Lesufi.